Hear it for Jen, who volunteers every single day of the week, every month of the year, every year in the calendar, for all of us. Luke from the Texas Democratic Party, I want to thank you for what you were doing, for helping to get us kicked off today, for registering voters, for bringing this party, I hope, into the 21st century where it belongs, and for focusing us on winning some elections in 2022. That's where it's at. And then, what this country needs right now is more Texas State House Democrats like Michelle Beckley, who despite being in... It's all right, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right. It's all right. Everyone be okay with him. He's all right, he's all right. All right. So, look, let me just finish this point on Michelle Beckley that this gentleman so rudely interrupted. What the country needs is more courage like that which she showed and her colleagues showed. Though they are in a minority in the Texas legislature, they were able to stop one of the worst voter suppression bills in the country. What I want to make sure is that those Democrats in the United States Senate who are in the majority, who actually have a chance to pass voting rights legislation, take a page out of her book, show some courage, end the filibuster, and get that sucker passed right now. That's what we need. And, you know, this guy who came in to interrupt what we're doing and try to shout us down, I want to thank him too, because it's a reminder to each and every one of us that this is not going to be easy. We're going to have folks in our face. We're going to have folks trying to intimidate us. We're going to have people trying to suppress the vote in the state of Texas, just like this guy tried to stop us from what we're doing today. But if that guy is tough, we've got to be tougher, right? And for the Trump train, those guys with their flags, God bless them, who were honking their horns, you all saw It's a Wonderful Life, right? And remember, every time a bell rung, an angel got its wings? Every time the Trump train honks its horn, a voter gets registered in Denton County, right? That's the way we do it. So, we had the chance to start our day in Gainesville, Texas, earlier today, up in Cook County. It is not necessarily a bastion of the Democratic Party, but they make a mean fried pie there, and I had 4 of them. Let me tell you about Cook County and about Gainesville. So, in that county, 77 years ago, an entire division of men from across this country trained, came together, worked as a unit, and then boarded trains at the famous Santa Fe Depot in Gainesville and shipped off to boats that were awaiting to take them across the Atlantic, where they then trained for the final preparation of D-Day. And 77 years and a day ago, Those men who trained in Cook County in Gainesville, Texas, embarked across the English Channel, got off those troop transport carriers, and stormed the beaches of Normandy. Every man in that unit trained together, took the trains together, took the ships together, was in England together, took the troop transports together, and landed on that beach together. But not every single one of them would come back home. They gave their last full measure of devotion to this country, to you and to I and to every single one of us. To every veteran out there right now, every veteran among us, I want to thank you for what you do. For being willing to serve this country, putting your life on the line, and literally being willing to give your life for this great democracy. It was also in Cook County that President Harry Truman in 1948 gave the last of his whistle-stop tour speeches in the state of Texas. And this is something that he said, and I wish these folks could hear me say this because it applies to all of us, Republicans, Democrats, Trump supporters, and never-Trumpers alike. This is what Truman said. He said, America was not built on fear. The fear that these guys have of immigrants, the fear that these guys have of the LGBTQ community, the fear that these guys have of anyone who doesn't look like, or pray like, or love like the majority in this country. We were not built on that kind of fear. Instead, Truman said, America was built on courage, on imagination, and an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. That's who we are in the United States of America. And I have been thinking about those who we lost, whose service we commemorated a week ago today on Memorial Day. I've been thinking about those great American leaders, Republicans and Democrats alike, who put this country before party, this country before their personal career, this country before the next election to make sure that each and every one of us was represented and served, and that their fealty was not to a single man, but to the Constitution of the United States of America. I've been thinking about those who have served and sacrificed for this democracy, who didn't wear a uniform, who took Greyhound buses in the Deep South in the 1950s and the 1960s, knowing that it might very well cost them their lives. Those who sat in at lunch counters to be abused and spit upon and hit and belittled so that they can integrate those lunch counters and so that men and women, no matter the color of their skin, could be treated like the human beings they are in their own country. All of those, in other words, who made today possible, who gave us the ability and the right and the chance to be here with one another in this great country. And I'm thinking about them because this democracy of ours, that they so willingly laid their lives down to defend, to protect, and to expand, is threatened now, is under attack unlike any time in our lifetimes, perhaps unlike any time in the history of this country. These fine jackasses over here and men and women just like them, 6 months ago, took those Trump flags, took the Confederate battle flag, and they invaded the United States Capitol, the citadel of our democracy. In the process, 5 people, including a police officer, lost their lives trying to defend the vice president, who happened to be a Republican, Mike Pence, from being hung at a public gallows that was constructed in front of the Capitol. They defended the members of Congress, Republican and Democrat alike, who were just trying to do their job and represent their constituents. They were there because of the big lie told by the former president, trafficked by those who are complicit in his crimes, including our junior senator right here in the state of Texas. And their crime, as yet unpunished, That big lie, as yet unmet by the truth from all of us, has compelled Texas and Georgia and Florida and Iowa and Montana and 40 other states to introduce more than 360 voter suppression bills in this country that would roll back the right to vote for tens of millions of our fellow Americans. And I want to be clear, not for everyone and not for those fellow Americans who look like me. As has always been the case in the course of voter suppression in the United States, these laws target black voters, they target voters of color, they target voters with disabilities, they target voters who live in big cities, they target the very young, and they target the very old. In Texas, the hardest state in which to cast your ballot or to register to vote, 50th out of 50, a state that closed 750 polling places over the last 8 years, concentrated in the fastest growing black and Latino neighborhoods, a state that has a racial gerrymander that has drawn black Texans out of their congressional districts to diminish the power of their vote, a state where you cannot use your ID as a student at UNT to prove who you are, but you can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the ballot box. That state has introduced even more voter suppression measures targeting those the Republicans do not want to show up at the ballot box. Now, when you connect that to every other voter suppression bill in every other state, you understand they're not just rolling back multiracial democracy in America. When you connect it to the insurrection attempt, the sedition that they espouse and represent, we might, ladies and gentlemen, 245 years into this experiment, we might very well lose this form of government, which Abraham Lincoln, no less, called the last best hope of earth. The good news is, if there's any good news that I have to share with you today, is that this is not yet a done deal. And in government of, by, and for the people. You are the government, I am the government, you are the government. And we have a chance to make this right. Now, there are three things that I want to ask of you. And then I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and see what you have to ask of me or others who are here, including Representative Beckley. If we're going to overcome this voter suppression, these attacks on our democracy, we must stand together and do this as a community. And we're going to do the following things. Number one, as Representative Beckley said, there will likely be another voter suppression bill in a special session this summer. We have to stand behind her and the other state House Democrats and ensure that they have the courage and the support and the resources to fight back and to win again. But we must also call our Republican state reps and state senators and let them know exactly how we feel, right? Can we do that? That's job number one. Job number two is to reach out to the White House, to President Biden, and to ask him to do everything within his power as the most powerful man on the planet to pass the For the People Act. It's a bill that has passed the House of Representatives. It's a bill that he said he would sign if it got to his desk, but it is a bill that is now languishing in the United States Senate. Now, Joe Biden, if he were here right now, might tell us that he's just one man and he doesn't have the power to do it. But I want to tell you a story, a true one, that I heard from our friend in Georgia, Stacey Abrams. She tells me the following. It's 1964. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Andrew Young walk into the White House to meet with President Lyndon Baines Johnson. And they plead with him to use his political power to pass a voting rights bill. They say, President Johnson, in our states, in Georgia, and Mississippi, and Texas, and the other states of the former Confederacy, a black man, a black woman cannot vote. There are some counties in Mississippi that are 80%, 90% African American, and there's not a single black voter on the rolls. Mr. President, the poll tax, the literacy test, the how many jelly beans are in this jar before I allow you to register to vote, all of that is keeping us, and by extension this country, back from fulfilling its promise and its potential. Mr. President, you must do something. And President Johnson said to them in return, I would love to. You're right. What you just described is wrong, but I do not have the power. I am but one man, and the United States Congress, especially those Southern Democrats, they'll never go for this. They'll never vote for this. They'll never buy this. I don't have the power. Dr. King, Andrew Young left the White House, and a dejected Andrew Young said, well, what do we do now? And Dr. King turned to him and he said, we're going to go get the president some power. Over the next year, people like you and me, everyday Americans, took to the streets. They marched, they stood up, they spoke out, they called their members of Congress, they flooded the White House switchboard and told President Johnson that they wanted this to pass. And in fact, John Lewis, at the tender age of 24 years old, that next year in 1965, March 7th, he starts a march from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery to stand up and march and walk and fight for voting rights. But before John Lewis can even get across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, he is beaten within an inch of his life. They almost killed him right there on the spot. Inspired by that sacrifice, that struggle, literally putting his life and his body on the line, President Johnson, 8 days later, convenes a joint session of Congress, all the Democrats, all the Republicans, all the House members, and all the senators. And he refers to John Lewis and his sacrifice. He says, a week ago on Bloody Sunday, men and women were literally willing to die to have the right to vote in their own democracy. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, you alone have the power to confer that right upon them. I want you to do your job and get this passed. And he did. The 1965 Voting Rights Act ushered in the first generation of multiracial democracy in America. And it was the people of this country, it was the people of Denton as well as the people of Selma that made that happen. We just have to decide that it's our number one priority. That's a long way to get you to action item number 2, which is to call the president, tell him he has the power, and ask him to use it. Are you willing to do that? All right. Number 3, and this is our insurance policy, folks. You've been wondering what this badge is that I'm wearing. It shows that I am a certified volunteer deputy registrar. I now have an official office in the county of Denton as one of your VDRs. The last 2 offices I ran for did not work out, but this one I got, okay? So 1 for 3. What this allows me to do is I can knock on any door in the county of Denton and see if somebody is not registered to vote and would like to get registered to vote. And if they do, I have them fill out a form, I sign it, I take it over to the elections department in Denton, which I visited today. They will get mailed to them a voter registration card, and they are street legal to vote in the 2022 election. All of us here who live and are registered in Denton County, and you can do this in your home county if you're not from Denton County, can do the exact same thing that I did today. It took me all of 5 minutes to get this done. And I've already registered 1 voter in Denton County already, so it's that easy. And the reason this is our insurance policy is the following. If we are unsuccessful at the state level in stopping the next iteration of Senate Bill 7, that voter suppression bill, if we cannot compel the president to use his awesome power to pass voting rights while this democracy is on the line, then I want us to remember that there are 7 million Texans who were eligible to vote in 2020, the most important, the most dramatic election in American history since 1860. 7 million who did not vote, who are eligible to do so. 2 million of them We're not even registered to begin with. If every one of us will become a volunteer deputy registrar, just like I did here today, then we can register those 2 million voters and bring their numbers and their votes to bear in the next election. And no matter how rigged the system, no matter how tilted the playing field, we can overcome them with the power of the votes in this state. Are you willing to do that, to become a VDR? If we can do these three things, I believe we may just have a shot at saving our democracy, and it is the most important thing we could fight for at this moment. So I want to thank you, Denton, for your commitment to doing this, for being with us, for welcoming us once again. Cynthia Cano is going to take this mic and hand it to anybody who would like to say their piece, ask a question, except for that guy who came in earlier, that lost his privileges. But anyone else, and look, you don't have to agree with me, you don't have to draw the same conclusions I did, but if we disagree, let's do it civilly. Let's demonstrate, let's model good behavior for these folks over here, and just be kind and cool to each other. All right, so if you have a question, Cynthia's going to bring this mic to you, and
you guys are going to have to speak up really loud. No, you can do it. Here we go.
All right.
Check.
My question, the problem is the representatives that we have representing us, you can't ration with them. You can't talk to them. We have Cruz, we have Cornyn, we have what's-his-face, that guy that's in jail now on top. How do you deal with these kind of representatives? Who do you go to?
So it's a great question. Look, the question was, to repeat it for everybody, what happens when your representatives don't listen to you? Not every representative is as great as Michelle Becker. Not every representative is going to pick up the phone, give you a call, listen to what you have to say. Some of them, and let's be empathetic. Our junior senator has got a lot on his plate. When he's not inspiring insurrection, or racing off to the Ritz-Carlton in Cancun when the rest of the state is freezing, that guy's really busy. So this is why I want us to register our fellow Texans to vote, because if they are not picking up the phone, if they're not responsive to what we have to say, we've got to replace them in 2022. That's what we do, okay? Thank you.
Okay, Beto, when is your campaign going to start making t-shirts that say Beto for governor?
So this fight that we're in right now, I'll tell you. I would love to give you a more direct answer, but let me indulge me. If we do not save this democracy, if we do not have free and fair elections in this state and in the rest of this country, it will not matter who the candidate is or what T-shirt you wear. It just will not have a shot. One of the aspects that neither Michelle